Hi, my name is John. I'm with Good Burger Reviews, and I'm here to do a brand new movie review of Final Destination Bloodlines.
Death is coming for our family.
I said, oh, 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 oh.
This movie is being distributed by New Line Cinema. It is starring Caitlin Santawana, Breck Basinger, Richard Harmon. Of course, Tony Todd has a role. Owen Joyner, Tio Briones, April Tilek, Julia Campbell, Alex Zahara, Andrew Tingpo Lee, Max Lloyd Jones, and Mark Brandon. It is directed by Zach Lipovsky and Adam Stein. Plagued by a violent and reoccurring nightmare, a college student heads home to track down the one person who might be able to break the cycle of death and save her family for the grisly demise that inevitably awaits them all. All right, legacy sequel. Can I say this one's done real right? So I'm gonna go over my basic view of this movie and then get into some heavy spoilers, but I will definitely give you guys a warning and a spoiler alert when I get into anything I think is a major spoiler, anything that you may not want to see or hear before going into the movie. Now, before I get into the details, the goods, whatever bads, and the mixed on Final Destination Bloodlines, please give a like, subscribe, tap the bell for the notifications, all that jazz. I am still a growing station. I've been getting new subscribers this week, and I appreciate the growth. Welcome new subscribers, and let's get into this. Okay, so when I say that this is a legacy sequel done right, this one, I mean, the action, the comedy, the heartfelt moments, even the little bit of romantic comedy in the beginning, just so much blend and done so well, each tone coming in at the right moments. I'll tell you what, this one is in the running for the '1 spot this year. It's the one to beat, and I know there's some good competition coming yet. There's still some ones that I've seen that are like weighing on, or where they're at against this one, but this one is amazing. So first of all, the positives. Let's start with the opener. What a solid opener. Now, I just did my rankings on the openers. That one's still in editing and going to be released soon. This one's in running for the best one. Now, I'm not going to say anything as far as where I'm ranking Bloodlines in any of my categories against the other ones, because the other ones have been around 25 to 14 years. This one's been out a day, and I'm on the high of how great of an experience I just had with the movie. So I want to let some time sink in and definitely have a couple rewatches before I throw out another ranking or make my mind up of where this one sits. The opening, now you guys know that this was a throwback. There was throwback elements to it. It starts off in the late 1960s. And the opener just gives me a vibe of movies that were released at that time, especially ones that were released shortly after that, like 1970s, Total Earthquake, Towering Inferno, Poseidon Adventure, those action movies, those first great action movies that graced the screen at that time. There was a feel of that time frame and those types of movies in this opener. I was like, Earthquake, Towering Inferno, Armageddon, step aside because the action is real good in this one. Another positive for this one is the characters, and I complained throughout my ranking of the first five, like A lot of the characters in all of the Final Destinations, especially the tail end of the franchise, seem like generic CW characters, dollar store versions of better characters. These characters were decent. They were standouts in the franchise. Really some solid acting from the main people, the main girl, even some of the side characters. Ones that stood out to me, well, you have our main girl, and then there's her uncle and her cousins, and then her brother. I think the uncle was solid, even the aunt, the mom, the brother. Lots of good characters in this one. All right, how about those kills? Now, once we get past the opener, it does take a little bit for the kills to start to creep in, but they get there. And when the deaths start happening, I would say overall these deaths are really good. I'd say they are definitely a step up from most of the deaths throughout the franchise. Definitely in competition with some of them. There were some definite standouts in these deaths. I mean, talk about drawn out, subverting expectations, just great with the whole premonitions and how it plays out. Another good thing about this one was, they were a little unclear on the order. So, like, we didn't know who was going to die, especially in the first few deaths, until they start to figure out an order. And you know me, as far as the gore is concerned, I am leery on gore. But the gore in this one, I'm going to give this one a gore approved. I mean, this is Final Destination. The deaths are brutal. And in some of them, quite gory and cracky and crinky and all that other stuff. However, I think it was done in taste, done well, done to suit the need of this movie. Exciting, tense, and funny, some of them. The pacing overall is good. I never felt myself checking my watch. I never felt like, oh, are we getting there yet? I thought the movie plays out quite well, considering it is quite a long and complicated story, to get from A to B. Also, I'll keep this in the positive as well. The nostalgia, the throwbacks, total nods, and some of these nods crack me up. I mean, there was a nod to Final Destination 2, a log truck flies by in one scene, nods to many of the characters from former films. Clear Rivers is literally practically mentioned by name. Some of the nods were, just kind of vague or obligatory, but other nods were like straight on, like this is a nod to so-and-so. I found it funny that one of the characters looked like Carter from the original movie. Another character in here definitely had the Billy character going on, the kind of goofy, funny, nervous one. Total Billy in this one. Liked him. And that's one of her cousins. I feel like at some point there was a reference to at least something small in all of the movies, all of the Final Destinations that came through either in a funny or nostalgic way. So the mix, let's get into what I'm mixed about this. There's only one really mix that I have, and I did bring this up in my review during the Final Destination franchise rankings, and that is the lore that they added in part 5, where to get out of Death's trail, you have to kill someone. So that is prominent in this one, and I wouldn't say that's too much of a spoiler. More of a mild spoiler on that, but I will say this: they mention it. It doesn't come into play too much, and so forth in that one. I just remembered that I had mentioned that Smile, which was released 3 years ago, had this same little premise, and I said, like, did Smile take that premise to get out of the curse? You can kill someone from Final Destination 5, and now Final Destination 6 kind of has that in there. Maybe it was more of a nod to that one, because there wasn't much else mentioned out of 5 in this one. But like I said, with Smile, I felt like the whole murder to get out of the curse was a better thing than murdering in Final Destination. I just feel like overall, trying to murder someone to get out of it just doesn't fit with the original one. Maybe this is still a mix or a negative. I'll put it, I'll put this in negative. Suspension of disbelief on some of this. Obviously, that has been present in all of the Final Destinations. I wouldn't say it's a major issue here. When you understand how Final Destination works and you understand kind of how the characters catch on to it, and I always question, like, how do they catch on to how this works so quickly before, so many of them are dead? But they managed to do so, like in this one as well. Alright, so I'm going to get into spoilers now before I give the final rating. So I'm going to see if I can put like a timestamp or maybe a number where you can fast forward to get to the final rating on this one. So the opener, tremendous. It starts off with Iris. She is the grandmother of all her descendants that are in what follows, but she's quite young. It opens up, I think, 1968 or 69, definitely late 60s. The music, they totally, the whole music thing going on with it, like they're playing all these oldie songs, and, there were some good choices of, like, songs that kind of emanate Death is Coming, like The Ring of Fire, and Bad Moon Rising, and other great songs from that time frame, which I love the 1960s rock and roll, so the whole beginning, I was jamming. So Iris has this really long, big premonition. So, she's with her boyfriend. They are going out on a date, and it kind of reminded me a little bit of Drop when they arrive. The date is at the top of this gorgeous tower, and this tower is beautiful. It's obviously brand new. It was so new and evolved looking. I was thinking to myself, is this a building that looked like it would exist in the 1960s, late 60s, even early 70s? But you know what? The Twin Towers were constructed in the 70s. It's not to say that they couldn't do it. I just thought the style of it looked like a building that you would see like in, early 2000s, Taiwan or Japan. So as soon as she sees this building, as soon as she gets onto the property, she already is having getting creeped out. The little omens, little signs start appearing. She fits that main character, and it's this, and she's not the main character, but she's the premonition character. So, and that's where this one's going to come out just a little bit different. And I like that because talk about taking something great, a great premise from an old franchise, and coming back with something that is the same but totally fresh at the same time. So it's Grandma's premonition. And that plays into the whole thing of how this becomes Bloodlines later. However, she's the premonition girl in this one, and she's having this premonition, she gets in the elevator, and I felt like the elevator scene was a little bit of a slight homage to Speed. I was just like, everyone's squished in this elevator. There was also an elevator scene in Earthquake that it reminded me of, but she gets in the elevator, and they go up to the top floor, and when they get to the top floor, it's like the Drop restaurant, but like the 1968 version of it. Totally elegant, totally beautiful. Like, she's dressed to the nines, he's in a tux. Basically, this is where I was getting the whole, wow, this is becoming like a romantic comedy thriller, just like it was in Drop, just like it was in Hard Eyes. I'm like, oh my goodness, here we go again, another scary movie with a romance element, because lo and behold, the guy's about to propose to her after they're dancing and they go out on the ledge and all the omens are still going on, and she gets proposed to, and then she reveals to him, like, I'm carrying a baby. And it's like, oh, well, we got to have the bloodlines in there. So basically, she's pregnant and she's telling him, and he loves the idea. It was so romantic, so cute. But like, not long after she accepts the proposal, the premonition, the catastrophe and the premonition starts to unravel, and the building starts to collapse. And let me tell you, this collapsing building, all these disaster movies from the past can step aside on this. There was seemed to be little homages to some of them, especially like Towering Inferno and Earthquake. Like, if I could say this opener was like a blend of Towering Inferno meets Earthquake, it was. And then, the premonition is quite long, and a lot of people die. A lot, like over 40, I would say. And of course, our little dear sweet little Iris is the last to go, and this is key, she's running with a little kid that she saw playing in the back, and this comes in key later, and her and this little kid are the last ones to die in the collapse. So flash forward almost 50 years to the present, and here we are. It's her granddaughter. She's waking up screaming in a college bed, and she basically was having a dream of the entire premonition. Now, different from the other movies, on all the other movies, the person who has the premonition reverts back and they escape and they show all of that, and then they show death going after the people who reverted the premonition. Well, this movie says, oh no, we're going to give this a new flair, we're going to take a new lore, we're going to go down a new road, and we're going after everybody. And when I say everybody, it's the Bloodlines. That's why they call this Bloodlines. So her entire family, who she's now a grandmother, had kids, and her kids had kids. Her entire family are the people that are on death's list. But the question is, how in the world does it take 50 years for death to get to them all? Well, there's two main factors to that. And one of them is Iris has been in hiding for 40 plus years, or well, maybe 20 plus years, doesn't exactly say, but she's been in hiding ever since her husband died, the one that proposed to her on the tower, and they never really show the adult version of him.
And the other reason it takes so long to get to the whole family is Death is spending all this time going after the people that had survived the tower collapse that were supposed to die, and all their bloodlines as well. And since Iris was the last to die, her and her bloodlines were the last to get cleaned up. And it took 50 years.
Come.
I got it.
I don't think you got it.
I held him off for years.
Charlie, get up here.
He's a relentless son of a bitch. Won't stop till he finishes the job.
Okay, so flash forward. This girl's getting dreams, and she's going to hunt down Iris, but no one is talking to Grandma because why? Grandma's kind of crazy. And who does Grandma remind me of? She reminds me of Jamie Lee Curtis, Laurie Strode in Halloween, not Halloween original, not Halloween H2O or Resurrection, but Halloween 2018, the 40-year anniversary. And why do I say that? Because when granddaughter arrives at the property to where Grandma stays, where Iris stays, that house that was in the original Halloween, you know how it was decked out, protected, fences, the whole nine, security systems, cameras, bright lights. Oh, that little house in Halloween, that little tiny fort that Jamie Lee Curtis, Laurie Strode lived in is nothing compared to the fortress that Iris has created in this place. And I'm telling you, it is a giant fortress. I wouldn't say it's giant, but it is a fortress that is decked out to the nine with protection. It is a safe place for her to be, and she survives all these years in this place, even though death is right at her door for 50 years. So of course, when Stephanie meets up with Grandma's got the whole lore down. Iris, she was tied up just like Alex Browning was tied up at the end of the first Final Destination, of course, but way better. And she's not there long, and she starts hearing the whole spiel about death's design, premonition, surviving, and then, of course, it's been 40 to 50 years since the initial premonition, and this girl has been keeping tabs on death the whole time. She's got notes on every time death has come, and I mean, she's got a book this thick of newspaper articles and clippings and photographs of death in action, and she's ready to pass this information on to her granddaughter because she knows that once she dies, because she's been watching it happen to the other people who survived, that her family, her bloodlines are going to be next on the list. Of course, granddaughter, and her name is Stephanie, she does not believe it at first, and she storms off, and next thing you know, Grandma really wants her to believe, Iris wants her to believe, and she chases her out of this fortress to give her the book, and of course, death comes. She gave her life, and she was old now, but she gave her life, what was left of her life, so that granddaughter would take the book and believe. And that death is quite comical because they're like a foot apart from each other when she gets it. But then Stephanie comes back and she goes back to the family and she tries to sell them the dream on this, premonitions, death's coming, we're all on the list, I know the order, blah, blah, blah. And just like in all the other Final Destinations, the characters, the family is like, oh, you've got to be kidding me, stop falling for Grandma's psychopath, psycho bullcrap, and all that. And, again, when this happened, it was giving me Halloween 2018 vibes. Why? Because you have the three generations in Halloween. You have Laurie Strode, Judy Greer, I forget her name, Strode, and then Allison, the youngest little Strode, granddaughter. And when granddaughter starts believing Grandma, Mom's not having it. Mom's like, I've lived this. I've lived through her trauma. I have been raised under her trauma. And the whole same thing happened where both sets of middle kids the middle generation had gone into foster care, the whole nine, and that's mentioned here. And of course, son, who's Uncle Howie, and daughter, who I think is Darlene, I forget the mom's name, but daughter, brother and sister to Iris, they're like, yeah, we've been down this road before. We don't want to hear about death. We don't want to hear about traps. We don't want to hear about hiding, And they have reason not to believe because they've lived their whole life fine. Death isn't after them yet. But now she's dead, so they are and on the list. Of course, a couple more deaths have to happen before the family starts buying into it. And there's this one scene now. I'll tell you what, the one kid, the oldest kid who's named to die first of the family, well, first of all, I was mad. Uncle Howard was first on the list because he's the oldest in the family. So it was going to be Uncle Howard, then all of his kids, and then Darlene, and then all these kids. And she was under the sister and had a little brother that was on the list. Now, the brother and sister each had married someone. They were safe. So we kind of disposed of them early on. And I didn't like her dad because he kind of dismisses the whole thing. Auntie on the other side dismisses it as well, but does try to be more compassionate and understanding with her niece. However, the oldest, so Uncle Howard gets it before anyone even believes. And his death was comical. I wasn't sure if he was going to be the next one. This was before we really learned the order. And I'm like, I hope it's not him. I like him because he was so positive. He was always trying to bring the family together. He said such great things. He had such great speeches when the sister came home, when the mom died. He was like the patriarch of this family. So I was like, dang, why do you have to go first? He really could have been integral in the story, but that was the order.
Family, you don't get to pick the one you get. Just gotta love the one you got.
So oldest son. So this was all right. So this scene where he's in the tattoo shop, and death is right on his tail, and then it plays through, and they're playing Air Supply Without You, by the way, which I like that song. I don't know how well it fit this movie, but it fit that moment because he was missing his dad. But death goes after him and you think that he dies. So this is a fairly big spoiler, even though we're in the spoiler section, but he doesn't die in this tattoo shop. And the very next morning, Stephanie and her brother are looking for him, and then he's just walking down the street. I'm like, wait a second, didn't he die? But it turns out he didn't die. He's like, oh, I came real close and it was because I was wearing a leather jacket. I'm like, oh, fake out. But whatever. So I would have put that in the negatives earlier, but I didn't want to spoil it for those who weren't watching the spoilers. But they hadn't figured all out why he hadn't died yet. So cousin Stephanie, she's like, "Oh, you're gonna die," until like literally this part was comical. Like they're walking down the street, the two cousins and the brother and her, and she's like, "Oh, stay away from that weed whacker. Stay away from those kids playing basketball." And it's like, or soccer, and it's like, oh my God, she's getting real paranoid. But it was kind of scary, but kind of comical because they're still in that age of not believing stage. And then next thing you know, there's this dump truck coming down the street, and the dump truck, like, I'm thinking, yeah, dump truck's getting someone. The garbage men are gonna be part of the next death. But I did like this, so even though I hated that we had a fake out death, the death that comes along was pretty decent. And she kind of predicts it out. She never has an image. She never has premonitions like the other people, because she's not really premonition girl, but like she definitely gets a sense of what's going on, because she literally describes the death that's about to happen. Like, what if this rake hits this guy blowing leaves, he scares the kids playing soccer, they kick the ball into your head, and it's like, what? Like, oh yeah, what's the chance of that happening? But lo and behold, after they get clear this little group of people that they were scared of, girl cousin comes out and she starts walking down the street. Don't know why, but whatever. And the dump truck goes by as well. And we think, oh, are we in the clear? Because the oldest brother was next to die. But what happens was, next thing you see in the background, girl gets, the whole thing happens. The weed whacker, the leaf blower, the soccer ball, boom, the girl's in the trash can. Trash can goes up into the bin and she gets trash compacted in the trash thing. And that death was drawn out. That death was a really good death, by the way. They're chasing a truck and it gets comical because they're chasing the truck trying to save her, but the guy is, this old middle-aged guy is in the truck and he's listening to Kelly Clarkson and he's jamming and he can't hear anything that they're saying, and he doesn't ever stop the truck until it's too late, and girlie dies. But wait a second, that's out of order. Why are we out of order? Well, now two people have died and now they're starting to take Stephanie serious. So the family reconvenes again, and it's like, what's going on here? Well, oldest boy of the cousins says, why didn't I die? And Auntie all of a sudden drops this huge bomb on the entire family. Well, you're not in the bloodlines because I had an affair on your dad, and you're so-and-so, Henry Jarvis or whatever. The name was so funny, and the way he said it was so funny. You're so-and-so's baby. And he's like, what? No wonder you wanted to play catch with me the whole time. And I'm like, oh my God, this is getting like a little too much, but it was funny. And, all of a sudden he's safe, he's safe at the moment, I guess. But then that instantly, now the girl's dead, it puts the youngest, the Billy character, next on the list. So here they go again. They want to go out searching for more answers, and they end up going to, I guess it's like some sort of hospital or something, because I guess in the paper she read, somebody knew someone that had survived, and the someone that has been survived, the someone who knew was only known as initials JB. And I didn't know who that was. I figured it was going to be someone, and I should have known who it was right out the gate. But they show up at this hospital, the ones that are left, and they get in there, and the two brothers who are her cousins are trying to figure out a way to kill Billy, or the Billy, Billy 2, I forget his name, but kill him and then bring him back to life so that he can skip the curse. Because I guess, that's what happens, because when they get to the hospital, they meet JB, and JB is Bloodworth, and the B was the Bloodworth, Tony Todd's character. And I'll tell you what, seeing Tony Todd in this film, OMG. First of all, it brought back the memories of all the old films, him as Candyman, but he definitely looked a lot older, and he looked like he was at death's door because he was so skinny. And I already know that Tony Todd passed away. So sad. You know, it just was sad, and it was sad seeing him in the film. And when he gives his speech telling them how to live life and appreciate each moment, I was crying. It was so emotional. I think the other people in the theater were crying. I went to the early showing, 3 o'clock, so like there wasn't too many people there. I'm sure there'll be more crowds at the night showings of this, but it was like listening to him talk and his character. So I mean, Bloodworth has changed. I mean, over the years he didn't come off as creepy as he did when he was younger, in the younger ones, but he came off as so sweet and endearing and caring, and it was really nice. Actually, I really liked it. I really liked how he played out. And then, like, you know, he talks about death and how he's so close to death, and to know that, you know, he probably knew he was gonna die anyway in real life. It just was, you know, so emotional on that scene. So then the two brothers separate from the family, and they're trying to pull off this. Well, Bloodworth ends up telling them in all of his life lessons that they can. That's where the whole Final Destination 5 plot line comes in. You can kill someone, or you can die and get brought back to life, and that'll also save you from the curse. So now or from death's design, not the curse, but what it's a curse anyway, whatever. Anyhow, the young kid and his older brother, they are now at this vending machine trying to get peanuts, trying to get something, because he's got a peanut allergy, by the way. And it was so funny because he was literally like afraid of a jar of peanut butter. It was comical. But he's definitely allergic to peanuts, so they're about to give him peanuts, and then they're in a hospital, so they're gonna wheel him to get brought back to life, and that's their grand plan. Except for Death somehow gets involved, and I don't know if the other brother ended up being up on the list or just was in the way of the list, and maybe Death will try to get anyone who's stopping his design. But they're in this room that's like this super, like, you know those rooms where you get like EKGs and they put you in the tube and they look at your brain and all that stuff, and they do all this great medical stuff. Well, I don't know, there must be the room that they were in was with some giant machine that was extremely medical, and it's like where you get those CAT scans or whatever where they look at your brain. I don't know, those big circular things, and you get put in the tube. Well, this thing was highly magnetic, and somehow it turns on, and all of a sudden everything's getting sucked towards it. And this kid had been sitting in a wheelchair. Well, he got out of the wheelchair because he was reacting to his peanut allergy. He did down some peanuts and then was going through the peanut allergy thing. He falls to the floor. Well, the wheelchair goes flying because of the magnetics and sucks the other brother and the wheelchair into this tube, and it was like the gymnast death from 5, crack in half, and into the pipe they went. And then brother dies as well, from the vending machine. Something from the vending machine gets sucked into the room, and a giant pole goes through his face. And you know, now it's completely chaotic. Now we're down to the other leg of the family. It's the mom and the 2 kids are the only ones left. So they're going to, their new plan was they'll go live in grandma's house, since grandma lived there for so long and survived so many years. And they were thinking about doing it, then they didn't want to do it. They're going back and forth over it. But at the end, mom, who's been away, by the way, she was like away from them, and she'd broken up the family. And then, you know, daughter and her weren't getting along because of that. And then through all of this, they were coming together. And it was nice to see that no one was traumatized because someone died, even though they're all getting traumatized because someone's dying during the movie, but no one was really like of that. But I think they were kind of getting traumatized because their mom was out of the picture, if that suffices for that whole deal. However, mom decides to sacrifice her whole life, and she says, if I go live in grandma's house and stay alive for so many years and death never gets me, then death will never come for you because you guys are on the list after me. Which was a valiant plan, of course. When they get there, Death has other plans for these people. So they show up at the giant Halloween fortress squared, and they end up, they don't even make it in. Death has mom dead. And I'll tell you what, I had been saying like some of the beginnings of Final Destination were grandiose, but then the endings were kind of quick and silent, or one of them had more of a grandiose ending and a quiet beginning. Let me tell you what, grand beginning, grand ending. The ending is action packed with death on every corner of everything that they're doing. This RV that they're in gets tipped over. The fortress explodes. Mama dies. But son, the last two are left, and he rescues her from the water, and they thought that, they think, oh, she died and then came back because he brought her back to life, resuscitating her after she drowned. Well, in the final scene, and I'm going to spoil this all the way to the end because this movie's great and I love it, and I want you all to hear the whole thing. So in the final scene, it's true to form with its Final Destination ending. And let me tell you what. They are back at home. Some time has passed. They think they're in the clear, and they're, I guess, like younger brothers going to the prom or going on some date, and they're going to pick up his girl, and it's this whole happy type of ending. And oddly enough, while they're waiting for this girl to come out for the dance, her dad is like a doctor or some sort of specialist, and he's like, yeah, technically, if you, I don't know how it came up, I guess, he was like, sorry that all that terrible stuff happened in your family, but like, and she mentions, oh, I died and came back, and he said, and then the doctor says, well, technically, if you drowned and he brought you back to life, you never really died. You weren't really dead, but he did save your life, but you didn't die and come back. And then all of a sudden, as soon as that statement rings in their ears, it's like death is right back on the picture. And then all of a sudden, it's just like, how these Final Destinations love to end with a bang, and this train comes out of nowhere. And there was this whole thing with a penny, and the penny played a role in the premonition in the first dream and in the first tower collapse, and then the penny is here throughout the movie. I don't know what the significance of the penny is, but this penny that was in the whole thing, like literally, and the lady carrying the penny was like an old lady, so I'm wondering if they like meant it was the same exact penny that was from that dream. That was from the original tower, but this penny gets involved, derails the train somehow. I don't know if penny derails a train, but suspension of disbelief. And it was funny. The train comes flying through the air and boom, but it wasn't like the sign at the end of Final Destination 1. It wasn't like an insta death. Like, this train is coming at them, and they're like literally running, like outrunning it like a cartoon, and the train stops, and for a second you think they survived, and then boom, these holes come from behind the train, giant like yellow tubings that I guess the train had been carrying, right through both their heads. First the girl, then the younger one, like they're dead. Everyone's dead. The whole cast dead. The only people that survive were people not.
Everybody dies.
And I thought, oh my gosh. So, like, no sequel? What? But yes, I think there will be a sequel. There's definitely room for a sequel, and here's my idea. So, Hollywood, listen up. I hope you watch my channel. Someone over there, Guy Busick, someone. I think, this whole initial tower collapse happened in, like, 1968, and there's all these deaths that she had in her book of people who were outrunning death. You see it, 1980, 1995, 2000, to 2025, of people that she was monitoring that were escaping death. There are so many opportunities to write a prequel to at least the first 5. I saw lots of things in the 80s block of this little chart, and I thought, wouldn't it be great to have a 1980s style Final Destination? Because the Final Destination didn't exist in the 1980s. I'd love to see Hollywood do that, so maybe there's room for sequel there. But that's it. We're done. I'm going to get down to business on this one. Okay, sometimes I wonder why I even wait to the end of my reviews, because sometimes the really, really bad ones and the really, really good ones, it should almost be obvious. But we got another one. This is definitely a cheeseburger in paradise. Like I said, I think I already said it in the beginning of the video. Running for the #1 movie of the year right now. I'm not saying it's in the slot for good, but it's definitely right at that door where I'm thinking which one of these other cheeseburger in paradise are ahead of it. And I can't think of one. I've only given out 4, I think. We'll see. We got some great movies coming out. Looking forward to Bring Her Back, The Ritual, and of course, people that I think could be contending with this one. Another Jurassic Park is coming out, a legacy for I Know What You Did Last Summer. We have The Conjuring 4. I mean, there's so many movies that could ring this bell, that could keep challenging Final Destination Bloodlines. But I will say, if you guys, any of you loved any of the Final Destinations, go see this one. This one's great. My expectations, all the fears I had, all the worries, all the concerns that I was like, oh no. And super glad that I didn't watch the trailers. I know I'm going to be watching the trailers as I edit this video, so I won't be able to commentate on it, but like I know there's probably spoilers in there that I'm glad that I didn't see till today, till I saw the whole package together. Keep a lookout for all the videos that I will be having on Final Destination. Even though I recorded all my rankings and all my death rankings and opener rankings before seeing the movie, this video will actually be out and up for you guys to see, so you can get the review of Bloodlines, and then the other ones will come out subsequently over the next week or two. All right, have a good one, guys. Stay scared, and definitely from Death's Design.
Only by embracing death will it pass you by.
Maybe Death's not actually coming for our family. Because that would be crazy.
Good luck.